Welcome to this final academic session. And I beg apology in the very beginning that since I have been asked to listen to 6 presentations and only 1 hour is left with us. So I pray to all of you, I request all of you, Professor Shankaran Kutty Nair will take 15 minutes maximum. And the rest will take 10 minutes. He is a senior professor. Please allow him to listen. Let us listen to him. So, Professor Nair.
Esteemed Chairman, Professor Jha, Dr. Rana, Manoj, friends, academics, fellow paper presenters. I am really thankful to CIF and also to Shen for having organized this type of a seminar to enlighten more and more about the need for spirituality at the school, college, university level. In fact, for the last 2 centuries, the effort has always been to sideline Indian culture, Indian history, Indology, etc. I don't want to say or I don't want to find fault with anybody. It was an age of colonialism and imperialism. But the pity is that even after independence, even after 67 years of independence, no tangible change had come to our educational pattern, despite we hear of many education ministers from Abul Kalam Azad down to Kapil Sibal or anybody for that matter. So changes had not come so far fundamentally with regard to the educational pattern. This all began with the colonial policies pursued by the British, particularly when English education was introduced by Colonel Macaulay. And he was able, or rather he wanted to give form and shape to a steel frame. That steel frame had not been broken till now, in spite of 67 years of independent existence for Kerala. As a student of history and as a student of Kerala, I found that the most important unifying and rallying force in Kerala happened to be Adi Shankara. Adi Shankaracharya, born here, and as per the Kerala practice, or for that matter as per the practice in South India, he was born here, and after 90 days he was taken to his father's house in Kaladi. But usually in All India pattern, in most of the textbooks and even researchers continue to write, Adi Shankara was born in Kaladi. Adi Shankara was born very much here in Adi Shankara Nilayam in the year 788. He was a contemporary of Kulasekara Alvar and also a contemporary of Rajshekhara Varman Nayanar. So we have evidences of about his contemporaneity. So born and brought up in Ernakulam district for that matter, Shankara grew to become the world conqueror spiritually. So he mastered all what is required of an Indian with regard to spirituality. And Shankara was able to consolidate whatever we had inherited. The best points of Jainism, the 3 Ratnas, the Noble Eightfold Path of Buddhism, even some of the best points of Christianity had been consolidated and incorporated in the Hinduism, which he was able to revive and which he was able to usher in. He was one who championed the cause of Bhakti cult, and with him began Bhakti movement in the whole of India. After him, after his Advaita, we hear of the efforts made by Ramanuja, Vallabhacharya, Madhvacharya, down to Mirabai and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the so-called revival or the revival of Bhakti movement and Bhakti cult in India happened to be the contribution of Adi Shankaracharya. No doubt about that. He happened to be the most important, most acceptable unifying force, wherein he was able to give, he was able to present, he was able to popularize, he was able to provide for us the best cardinal points of Hinduism, incorporating Jainism, Buddhism, of all its dimensions and varieties. And in Kerala, Adi Shankara had two main disciples in modern days. One happened to be Sri Narayana Guru, born in the year 1855. He, through his Atma-upadesha Shadagam, was able to give some shape to our religious thought. And perhaps there was a paper on Sri Narayana Guru by my friend Ashokan in which he was able to, I couldn't hear it, but he might have said, I am quite sure he was one of the important forces who was responsible for creating a spiritual halo. I am going to speak on the second person, but senior to Sri Narayana Guru. And when Sri Narayana Guru had written a poem at the time of the death of the person about whom I am going to speak, he treated in that poem, my Guru died. So I am also getting old. After 4 years, Narayana Guru died. I am speaking about a person who was born and brought up in 1853, namely Vidyadhiraja Chattambi Swamigal, a person who was responsible for reviving the Adi Shankara cult in this part of Kerala. Of course, he had written more than a dozen books. Actually, 19 books had been written. He knew Sanskrit, Tamil and Malayalam, never knew English, any of the Western languages, and he was well-versed in A to Z of Hinduism. And he had divine darshan. That is what we believe. And he had published mainly 2 books, which is the focus of attention today in my paper. One is Adi Bhasha. Adi Bhasha means the first language. The other one is Prachina Kerala, means ancient Kerala. So, through ancient Kerala in Malayalam, written in Malayalam, and Adi Bhasha, the first language written by him, Chattambi Swamigal, Vidyadhiraja Chattambi Swamigal. In fact, I wanted to provide you with a book in Hindi, but I failed to bring out from Trivandrum. But for the next any conference, or I shall try to send it to you, this Hindi version of Vidyadhiraja Chattambi Swamigal, because I have with me some 40-50 copies given by the publisher some time back, but I failed to bring it. In any case, Vidyadhirajan, through these 2 books, was able to give a new leadership to Hindu Renaissance in this part of South India. And make it a point that last year we have celebrated Vivekananda Swami's 150th birth anniversary, and also the 120th anniversary of his Chicago address. And Vivekananda stayed in Bangalore for a time when one of the social reformers from Kerala, Dr. P. Palpu, the real founder of SNDP Yogam, met him. He told him that I am a medical licentiate, but I couldn't get any job in Travancore state because it was caste-ridden. So Palpu was advised by Vivekananda Swami, you find out a Swami and organize a social organization. Palpu came to Travancore and made Sri Narayana Guru and founded SNDP Yogam in 1903. Just because SNDP Yogam and Dr. Palpu got this new light, the mouthpiece of SNDP Yogam was given the name Vivekodayam. Viveka Buddhi was given by Vivekananda Swami as part of the interaction in between Vivekananda and Palpu. Vivekananda was one who wanted to get himself acquainted with the actual state of affairs. And Vivekananda Swami came from Mysore to Shornur. In those days there was no railway line, so he had come up to Shornur. From Shornur he came by boat to Ernakulam. En route he had recorded in Viveka Juramani, published from Chennai, that in Kodungalur, when he was sitting very near to the temple nearby, young students were passing through the road, speaking Sanskrit. So I am speaking about the second half of the 19th century, wherein Even ordinary students used to speak Sanskrit. Now, can we see anybody speaking Sanskrit outside a Sanskrit forum like this? No, never. So those students were speaking Sanskrit, and Vivekananda was astonished to find such Sanskrit fraternity sitting and chanting near the temple. And from Kodungallur, he had come to Ernakulam, and he stayed nearby the Tirumala Konkani temple in Ernakulam. So then he was able to realize that a Swami was living very nearby. Who was this Swami? He had invited him. So Vivekananda Swami had one genuine doubt. What exactly happened to be the real value of Chin Mudra? Chin Mudra was a thing which he couldn't understand in spite of his all India journeys. So Vivekananda wanted to clear the value of this. So when Vivekananda and this saint in Ernakulam interacted, the people who organized such a meeting were thinking what will be the medium of communication. There was no problem actually, because both of them knew Sanskrit, and the meeting for 30 minutes prolonged for 30 hours continuously. And it was in this meeting that Swami Vivekananda discovered that there is a son in Kerala, S-U-N, son in Kerala who was thorough with Chin Mudra and other A to Z of Hinduism. And Vivekananda treated Chattami Swamigal as a son. And Chattami Swamigal vice versa also treated Vivekananda as a son. But both of them couldn't understand the real merit of the other saint. And it was only after Vivekananda stripped from Ernakulam to Trivandrum and finally to Kanyakumari that he went to Chicago in 1893. And in 1893, September 11, he delivered the first address. And only when Vivekananda's picture came in newspapers that Chattami Swamigal came to know that the person whom I met was Vivekananda. That was the way in which things had taken shape. And this Chattami Swamigal, through these two books, was able to provide a renaissance phase in Kerala. And make the point that although he was a firm believer in Hinduism, the first thing in Prachina Keralam he has written. Kerala, in most of the Kerala history books, the first part consists of a legend, Parashurama legend. Kerala was created by Parashurama after Mahabali's surrender of Kerala to Vamana. So Parashurama created this. So Chattami Swamigal has written, it is a legend, there is no evidence for that. Without science, without rationale, without logic, we can't reconstruct history. So Chattami Swamigal happened to be the first historian, first writer, first scholar, first Sanskritist, first Indologist, who for the first time repudiated even one of the incarnations of Vishnu, namely Parashurama, that Kerala is not Parashurama's creation, but it's because of geological reason that Kerala has been created. So, from the repudiation of the creation of Kerala by Parashurama, he started to work and brought out this book through which he followed the policies of Adi Shankara, that only if you are convinced of something, you do it. Don't do anything just because I say it, just because some seniors say it. You do it only if you are convinced. This type of a teaching of Adi Shankara had been in toto practiced by him. The main title of my paper is Science, Culture and Spirituality. So the Macaulayan system is continuing despite 67 years, and we have to be doubly careful. Make it a point, just one example I am telling. The very much colonial culture continued in our state also, in our South India also. Even now we export our scientific personnel to America. Why Americans take Indians? Because Indian labor is cheap. They could get it for 1 lakh. 1 lakh to 2 lakhs. Whereas if they wanted to employ an American or a European or a Canadian, he had to spend 10 lakhs. So Indian labor is cheap. Indian people migrate and they settle there. But by the time their women folk, their children past 10 years, they think of sending back their daughter to India because of problems of society, including dating. Even parents permit sons to continue in European countries, but they never allow their daughters to continue because they are all against any type of dating with the Europeans. So this type of a system continues, and we are living in such a situation wherein the cultural admixture in the past ever so many years happen to be a reason, a serious bane. Asians, Chinese, Indians are all going to states like America. But for spiritual education, I am one who feel that we need not inject things at the postgraduate level. We have to start it from pre-puberty period. Unless we start, my grandson or my granddaughter, they are experts in computer or laptop or mobile. I do not know to correct it to make it an efficient mechanism. They learn it by heart. They know very well. So they could imbibe any new idea even from kindergarten days. So side by side with toys, we had to educate them spiritually. The A to Z of Hinduism should be taught to them, without which there is no way to settle this problem. So we need not inject them in CBSE syllabus, but we have definitely to start with pre-puberty days, without which the adoption of spiritual education at the Indian level will be a difficult problem. There is no other panacea which I feel for settling this issue, because even after 67 years of independent life, nothing tangible had come to betterify, to modify our system of education. So with these words, I stop you here. You are free to ask questions. My paper is about 20 pages. Jai is helpless, and the organizers are also helpless. Thank you.
I know that it's a great loss to us that we could not listen fully to Professor Nair. He's a great historian, and actually this information was missing. So I would request Dr. Rana to get this article from him in elaborate form, so that this gap also is bridged. So I'm sorry because of this 1 hour and then so many presenters. So please excuse me. I will go to the next. Now may I request Sarala Kumari to present her paper, Spiritual Education, The Way to Universal Harmony and Peace.
त्वमेव माता च पिता त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव. My topic is spiritual education.
Be close to the mic little. Take closer to the mic.
The way to universal harmony and peace. I express my gratitude to Swami Advayananda ji, Professor V.N. Jha sir, Professor Shiva Talwar ji, and Dr. Dilip Kumar Rana ji for giving me a chance to present a paper. Vidya Dadadi Vinayam. True scholarship bestows enabling humility. Sa vidya ya vimuktaye. That is education which broadens one's mind. It is proper to think in the present scenario. The saying stands where? Why it has happened? Think. When a child takes birth, Samskaras also start growing by the growth of the child. That is, from one's own childhood, personality starts to develop and makes its humanity. The child is the constructor of personality. A child is not a little thing, but he is the constructor of the world. Adult is being constructed from a child. The development of the child can be from that adult who will help the child to become the best. Keep on loving him and express our endless concern for his safety and comfort. At the same time, make them understand the higher and noble values of life. Encourage him to express his ideas upon that he has studied. Nobody can create with our efforts to mold a child. The task depends upon the child himself, and he has to accomplish it by his own intellect. Children can do much for the community. We should understand the ability in the child to take knowledge and culture. The child can grasp instructions and culture at an early age. Parents are the first teachers. They should show them the way to righteousness, dharma. Satyam vada, dharmam chara, swadhyayan ma pramadada. Speak truth, practice duties, do not neglect the Vedic studies. They need a deeper understanding and require some early steps in sadhana. So, in a way, spirituality starts from home. According to Indian scheme, the soul of life is twofold, Abhyudaya and Nisreyasa. Prepare our children to know the real purpose of the life. Who am I? From where I have come? What is the goal of our life? Where I will go, etc. Whatever religions you may be, values are one and the same. Only one should try to put it in action. The Purusharthas are Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha, and they are all same in all religion. But nowadays, all are not following this. If a man performed well in the duties of the station in which he has taken birth, he might progress spiritually towards union with the Supreme. Education is something to be lived. It should be an attempt to erase the ego, and at the same time, it is to remove the sense of duality from our lives. Education teaches man to love the entire creation. More than the knowledge of science, it is the deeper understanding of the truth of oneness of all creation. By observing the prescribed customs and practices, one can avoid committing mistakes. Culture and civilization were grand and glorious in olden days in India. India was not a country of today. It had moral and spiritual teachings. In our earlier educational system, spiritual education as well as secular education were taught. Dve vidye vedidavye paracha aparacha. Mundaka Upanishad 1:1-4. Paravidya is the supreme knowledge, and by that one attains the highest wisdom. Aparavidya is about to understand about the nature, laws, body, mind, etc. Except Paravidya, everything is Aparavidya. The secular education will make proficient to meet the challenges in their profession, and the values of life inculcated will mold them to be better persons in the society. Our need is to earn for our livelihood, but think that ideal of education is to serve. Here lies Chinmaya Mission motto. We stand as one family, bound to each other, with love and respect, ready to serve. Science has reached unimaginable heights, but it has lost peace everywhere. There is a limit to everything, and crossing that limit is equal to destroying the society. It is high time to think for protecting the generation. Love and compassion are diminishing in human beings. One must realize the oneness of the life force that sustaining and is the substrating can be attained through a deep study and the observance of spiritual principles. Though we have developed in technology, we could not find much development in unity and peace of the world. Man needs self-control. Continuous japa will quieten the mind. For that, texts like Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, etc. to be taught at an early age. Spiritual education can solve the problems for the existing conflicts in the society. Solutions are in the text. The young generation should try to take it. How to lead a peaceful and harmonious life is important. The messages hidden in these texts are universal. The basic philosophy of education is to be changed so that we can build a greater India as well as a greater world. True education is that which makes man ideal. The ideal of education to be each individual to be elevate man from selfish to unselfish, and that to be universal ideal of Godhood. The soul is eternal, it cannot be created. Today, worldly education is given importance. The moral, ethical, and spiritual values are on the decline. The modern students have no trace of these values in them. We should make them aware of the purpose of the life. More than the knowledge of science, it is the deeper understanding of the truth of oneness of whole creation to develop a sense of respect, love, and compassion to all. There is only one truth through all creations. It is universal. In Mundaka Upanishad it says, Brahma Vidyam Sarva Vidya Pradishtam. The knowledge of Brahman is the substratum for all other knowledge in this world. Societies and nations are composed of individuals. All conflicts originate within the individual. The cause of the inner conflict is the lack of awareness of our true nature. The role of spirituality is to awaken this awareness and thus to help to develop the qualities such as respect, love, compassion, tolerance, etc. Under no circumstances should our ties to a religion, society or country make us forget our basic human values. Basically, all human beings are members of the same global family. Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. The education of a nation is now laid on commercial principles of modern times, not upon the selfish ideas of political gain.
Conclude now. Conclude. We'll be reaching 200 tomorrow evening. I will stay. I'll do that. They will be coming. They will be sending someone.
All philosophical systems were very much necessary to make human beings in a better way. By defining it their own way, they protected it for the future generation. We are not supposed to neglect any system. All philosophical principles were relevant on that day and are relevant even today. Gurudev says, silently hear everyone. Accept what is good. Reject what is bad. Bad in the sense which is not acceptable to you and also to anybody. Conclusion. So we have philosophical principles. We have human values. Today what is lacking in this world? No peace, no harmony. Why? Because of the lack of value-oriented education. How can we regain this lost harmony and peace? In the present scenario, it is high time to explore new avenue for lasting happiness and shape a vision to restore the lost unity and peace of the world. By applying value-based education, make them understand the utmost necessity of the value of these principles that has a universal value. You be a Hindu, a Christian, a Muslim, be a follower of Vedanta, Nyaya or Mimamsa. Above all, be a human with the humanness. That's
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sarala Kumari. We all agree on this, that this kind of a mind must develop from the early age of a child. So right from the family, this needs to be education of this kind must start. Thank you very much for stressing this point. May I request now Shiva Anandan to present 10 minutes.
Good afternoon, all of you. I am Shaiba Anandan, research scholar in Sri
Not
Shankaracharya University of
audible.
Sanskrit. I am going to present in my seminar on the topic of the significance of universal brotherhood in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is one of the most important scriptures of the mankind, which has been a main guiding force of the people of the universe, particularly of India.
Bring it down little. Speak.
That was recited in the midst of the battlefield of Kurukshetra, where Lord Krishna preaches warrior Arjuna about the duty of an individual. Bhagavat means Brahman and Gita means song. The literal translation of Bhagavad Gita is the song of the Brahman. The Gita is a doctrine of universal truth and its message is also universal. Gita lays emphasis on ethical and moral principles in life. Gita says, "You shall not do to others what you do not want to be done to yourself." It enjoins all to do actions to meet obligations and duties of life, keeping in view the larger interest of humanity. It provides a rational basis for human behavior and helps in the refinement of moral, ethical, and spiritual values.
Little loudly.
The teaching of Gita have a universal appeal and are not restricted to any class or religious domination. It meets the emotional, psychological, and spiritual needs of all mankind. Gita is mainly a religious treatise, though it contains ancient Indian philosophy, policy, and the code of worldly conduct. Yet it is essentially a comprehensive guide to the Hindu way of life. The essence of Gita is, O man, renounce everything and practice spiritual discipline for the realization of God. The central teaching of the Gita is the attainment of the final perfection or freedom by doing duties of life or one's Swadharma. The Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, "Therefore, without attachment, do thou always perform action which should be done, for by performing action without attachment, man reaches the Supreme." Here arises the significance of the philosophy of Nishkama Karma, which is the basic thesis of Gita, is summarized in sloka
Be at calm.
47 of its second chapter, where Krishna says, "Your authority extends to the performance of prescribed duty, not to its fruits. Never should the fruit of action be your motive, nor be attached to non-action. This is the sensible solution of human miseries. Action is inevitable. Therefore, the Gita specially discourages renunciation of enjoined activity. Karma is necessary for existence, upliftment of human spirit, and progress of society. Religious activity, truth, innocence, moderation, brotherhood of mankind, etc. are natural human traits. The common phrase, innocent as a child, truly reflects the inherent human psychology. Unrighteousness is an acquired trait which signifies ignorance and is the root of deception, duplicity, anger, lust, attachment, and other basic instincts. The observation in this sloka that your authority extends only to the performance of duty, not to its rewards, set the Gita teachings apart from all the rest. Action with an eye on rewards may lead to material benefits, but they are invariably tinged with uncertainty, frustration, sorrow, and agony because of the unforeseen impediments. However, Nishkama Karma leads to same beneficial result together with an extra advantage of peace, satisfaction, and happiness. This philosophy does not advocate renunciation of action, only the renunciation of fruit of those actions suggested. According to Gita, the double purpose of human life is personal perfection and social efficiency together. Human perfection is a sort of marriage between high thought and just action. According to Gita, this is yoga, and this must be forever the aim of man. Here we see the emphasis of Gita on Loga Samgraha or world solidarity. Gita contains a very clear and important message relevant to finding a solution for the social and political impasse confronting modern India. The message can be summarized as Loga Samgraha, literally involvement with the world, and more broadly, the willingness of people to undertake an action, especially selfless action. Nishkama Karma provides the techniques of performing one's duty. Loga Samgraha provides the goal, direction, and therefore also the content of action that constitute duty. The compound word Loga Samgraha means social harmony as well as for the world preservation.
Okay.
Here Loga denotes mankind or the world, and Samgraha stands for protecting, keeping, regulating, etc. Loga Samgraha thus epitomizes in the Gita the social and universal dimension of Sri Krishna's teaching. In the Gita, we find the solution that individual elevation will enable one to lift others. Such an elevated person who does his duty in a detached manner becomes Sthita Prajna. Loga Samgraha or the welfare of the world as the motive and objective of all action in the special contribution of the Gita to Hindu religious and social thought. It follows naturally from the doctrine of unattached action, which is the central theme of Krishna's teaching. Gita supplied that the object of all action should be Loga Samgraha or the welfare of the world. The social theory behind the Loga Samgraha doctrine of the Gita is most important. The conception of a world order which it is the duty of an individual to uphold by dedicating his activity towards that end.
She is talking to herself. You can't hear anything. What you are talking to yourself. Anyway, conclude. Last sentence now.
Gita is the cream of the Vedas. It is the essence of the Upanishad. It is the universal scripture for all people of all temperaments and for all time. The Gita is considered by Eastern and Western scholars alike to be among the greatest spiritual book of the world has ever known. In a very clear and wonderful way, Supreme Lord Krishna describes the science of self-realization and the exact process by which a human being can establish the eternal relationship with God.
Okay.
I am concluding. In today's world of growing consumerism and rising violence leading to the restlessness, anxiety, and confusion in life, Gita's teachings are becoming even more significant than before. They are an eternal spring of wisdom required for developing right judgment, emotional balance, strength, and for recovering the ultimate destination of human life. Gita's teachings are accessible, acceptable, and applicable to all seekers of truth. Thank you.
Thank you. I am sorry that I could not give you sufficient time because you know the reason. Anyway, these terms, brotherhood, unity, universality, all these terms are very much required to be used nowadays. And from this angle, the text has to be studied properly. And the original sources have to be presented. And from that point of view, the brotherhood concept, first you have to define what brotherhood is, and then you should come to this kind of a thing. Okay? So make the paper complete and submit for publication. Thank you very much. Now may I call Mr. Samir PC? He will be talking on Sufism, spirituality, and sustainable rethinking of Islamic mysticism. Good.
Respected Sir, Dr. Vienja Sir, and other respected teachers and my friends. My topic is Sufism, spirituality, and sustainable rethinking Islamic mysticism. This is a different topic to present to this session. I expressed to my ideas. The content of the paper is to who is Sufi, what is Sufism, and how arrived Sufism in East and West. These topics are including my paper. Available time is very short. That is why I will express two points of my paper.
Straightway go to the conclusion. Okay, and explain conclusion. Okay.
Sufism has been an important part of the Islamic geography, and in every country where there are Muslims, also Sufi movements orders, and groups have flourished during the centuries. Sufism is the spiritual path and mystical way in Islam that leads the seekers towards the divine knowledge, while Sharia is the Islamic law organizing the actual social life in Muslim societies as a religious authority producing the structure of these societies. The substance of Sufism has been defined as selflessness, which required self-discipline to raise oneself above his or herself, identify oneself with the divine self. Love has been a crucial point of this self-discipline towards the divine unity, and Sufism has been considered as the religion of love. Ibn Arabi, who is referred to as Al-Shaykh al-Akbar in the Islamic world, said, "I follow the religion of love. Whatever way love's camels take, that is my religion and my faith." Yunus Emre, the Turki Sufi poet from the 13th century, says, "Love's like a shining sun. A heart without love or is nothing more than a stone." And the words of Muinuddin Chishti are like the summary of essential Sufi beliefs: love to all and malice to none. We can find thousands of examples like this, which is expressing the same love words. Many Sufis believe that love, the essential message of Islam, is also a message of Judaism and Christianity. According to Sufism, if God himself decided to care and love faced even these who deny his existence, then who are we to deprive someone else and our love? According to Sufism and Islam in general, all illnesses come from God, but the treatments come from the God as well. As it is stated in the words of Prophet Muhammad, Allah did not create any illness without also creating a remedy except death. Allah said that he who lives according to the Quran will have a long life. In the Sufi process of healing, sheikhs have special powers to mediate between God and patients. It is believed that sheikhs have through that mystical light, they can be of help patients as curer. And I am concluding this paper. Sufism is potentially one of the important practices that could prevent the struggle between civilization and show common values that exist in every civilization. And more discussion will after.
Thank you. Thank you. Now you can see is uniting everybody through love, the concept of love, the central idea of Sufism. Now you should make an attempt to compare it with the concept of bhakti, for example, parallel. So bhakti and love, how they go together. That kind of a comparison would be more universal in approach. Another thing that one term you have used is called sustainable rethinking, you say. That's a very, very important term. Sustainable rethinking. Now you know sustainable development, the term. But sustainable rethinking that he is talking is a very good, novel expression, and you should elaborate more on that. Anyway, thank you very much. Now may I invite Dr. Yamini Diwakar, Spirituality in, what is that?
Spirituality in Ayurveda. Namami Dhanvantarim Adidaivam Surasurairvandita Pada Padmam Loke Jararubhaya Mrutyunasam Dataramisam Vividhaushadhinam. Namaste, I am Dr. Yamini Diwakar and I have come from Andhra Pradesh. As an Ayurvedic medical practitioner, it is my privilege to associate Ayurveda with spirituality. In my 13 years of experience as a medical practitioner of Ayurveda, it is not sufficient to a patient if a Vaidya gives only medication. Most of the times, they need a counseling or an education in such a way that they are out of their stress, emotions and mental agony. Nowadays, these negative emotions are playing major role in causing so many diseases like diabetes, hypertension, psoriasis, IBS, mental illness, which are treated as the psychosomatic disorders. In order to overcome these ailments and to lead a happy, calm and blissful state, one has to travel in the spiritual path. And for that to happen, Ayurveda will help us to understand our own selves in a better way. So, now the question arises, why should we talk about Ayurveda in a spiritual conference? As we all know, a healthy body can only give room to a healthy mind. Good health stands at the very root of virtuous acts, acquirement of wealth, gratification of desire, and final emancipation. As earlier the speaker, Dr. Kannan sir said, Shariram khalu dharma sadhanam. It is also said in Charaka Samhita, Sutrasthana, as Dharmartha Kama Mokshanam Arogya Moolam Uttamam. This physical body is the only tool to attain moksha. Without this, or an unhealthy body will not be in a position to attain the ultimate. It is said in Charaka Samhita, Sharirendriya Sattvamatma Samyogo Dhari Jeevitam. The combination of the body, sense organs, mind and the soul is called Ayu. So, when we talk about Ayu or when we say Ayushman Bhava, it simply does not mean only the healthy life, but also to attain a spiritual life. Ayurveda mainly concentrates on swasthasya swasthya rakshanam first, and then only aturasya vikara prasamanam. That is, to sustain the healthy life of a person, it gives more importance. Sattvamatma Sariram cha Trayametat Tridandavat Lokastishtati Samyogat Tatra Sarvam Pratishtitam. Mind, soul and body, these three are like a tripod. The world is sustained by their combination. They constitute the substratum for everything. This is Purusha. This is the subject matter of this Veda, and that is why it is brought into light. It is also been discussed that how the diseases enter into the body. Kala buddhindriyarthanam yogo mithyana chaticha dvayasrayanam yadhinam trividho hetu sangrahaha. The cause of the diseases relating to both mind and body are the threefold wrong utilization, non-utilization and the excessive utilization of time, mental faculties and the objects of sense organs. And adhisthana of diseases, Shariram Sattva Sanyam cha Vyadhinam Ashrayo Mataha. The body and the mind constitute the substrata of diseases. Balanced utilization is the cause of happiness. And definition of health, Samadosha, it is dealt in Ayurveda as Samadosha Samagnischa Samadhatu Malakriya Prasanna Atmendriya Manaha Swastha Ityabhidiyate. It is the greatness of Ayurveda where in no other systems such an elaborated definition of health is discussed. And now somebody may ask a question like why one should practice only Ayurveda when there are number of other systems? Because no other systems deals with such an elaborated form of health, and the medicines we use are almost as natural as our body and are not new to us. So usually no side effects, and as in other systems which stay far away from nature are the Prakriti. In no other systems, Prakriti of an individual is dealt in detail. Now coming to the Panchamahabhuta theory, which has been accepted from the Sankhya philosophy, it gives rise to the main three elements of the vital elements of the Purusha, that is Vata, Pitta and Kapha. Panchamahabhutas are formed from the Prakriti. They combine together in different ways and give birth to the three vital forces of the body, that is Vata, Pitta and Kapha, whose characteristics are same as the Mahabhutas they are made up of. Akasha and Vayu gives rise to Vata, Agni gives rise to Pitta, and Jala and Prithvi gives rise to Kapha. At this stage, Vata, Pitta, Kapha are not treated as the doshas, as they are the vital elements to perform all body actions. Each of them are again divided into 5 types which will perform different actions at both body and mind levels. Coming to Vata, it is the primary biological force. It is primarily either ether in substance and air in motion. On an inner level, Vata governs sensory, emotional and mental harmony, balance and promotes mental adaptability and the comprehension. Vata endows us with positive traits of creativity, enthusiasm, speed and the responsiveness that allows us to achieve our goals in life. At body level, it occupies ears, skin, motor organs like speech and the hands. Pitta means the power of digestion. Pitta governs the digestion at mental and spiritual levels. Our capacity to digest impressions, emotions, and ideas in order to arrive at a perfection of the truth, at a perception of truth. Pitta endows us with positive traits of intelligence, courage, and vitality. Without it, we lack the decisiveness or the motivation to accomplish our goals. Pitta mostly located in the small intestines, eyes, and the feet. And coming to the kapha is the one which makes things stick together and refer to the power of cohesion. Kapha is located in the chest, throat, head, and in all the joints, and nose, tongue, and urinogenital systems, and the excretory organs. The kapha endows with feelings. This gives love and caring, devotion and faith, which serve us to keep in harmony internally and unite us with the world. Kapha allows us in the sustainability of what we have achieved and want to achieve. Now, the question arises, why these three elements get vitiated? This is because of mainly three things: Prajnaparadha, Asatmendriyartha Samyoga, and the Kala. Prajnaparadha is knowingly or unknowingly doing sins and not respecting our Gurujana, our parents, and the God. And Asatmendriyartha Samyoga, doing things which are not suitable or not supposed to do with the Ekadasa Indriyas. And Kala, by nature, sometimes the Vata Pitta Kapha get vitiated. How to overcome this? By following the rituals or to the morals said by the sages or the sacred texts, one can avoid Prajnaparadha Janita Rogas at both body and mind levels. And by practicing yogic methods, one can control the indriyas. As said in yoga, one can practice either Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Dhyana, and Bhakti Yogas. This thus avoiding Asatmendriyartha Janita Vyadhis. Just by following the Janacharya and Ritucharyas as dealt in Ayurvedic texts, as earlier the Purvi Chaitanya Amma said, that by following the 12 steps as quoted by her, we can also, in Dinacharya, we can also overcome the vitiation of the vital elements due to Kala at body level.
Conclude.
Now coming to the... Okay, sir. Now coming to the Vihara, with which we can dominate Raja Tamo Gunas or step by step. These vital elements will form the Sattva Rajas Tamo Gunas. Vata gives rise to Sattva characters mostly, and the Pitta Rajo characters, and the Kapha will give rise to Tamo Gunas. Coming to Vihara, with which we can dominate Raja Tamo Gunas or step by step, breaking up of the tamas and moving towards the rajas. For this transition, fire is necessary. One must wake up, act, and begin to change. To attain this, we may get involved in Karma Yoga. That is why the reason why in ashramas work is allotted to the seekers of spirituality at initial stages. Calming down the rajas to moving towards the sattva guna. This one may attain by practicing jnana and bhakti and dhyana yogas. Lastly, we must know how to sustain the sattva guna, which was already prevailing in every body from the birth. It is possible either by surrendering to a guru or to one's own self. Now, to know one's own self, we must know our deha and manasika prakritis at physical and mental levels. There are 7 types of prakritis based on the vital elements Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Vata, Pitta, Vata, Kapha, dualities are there, 6 dualities, and the last one is Samaprakriti. This Samaprakriti is Dosha Rahita. We should always try to bring our body into that state of our level best. Acceptance of individuality and being in harmony with nature is primary need in spiritual pursuit. And Ayurveda helps in understanding one's own self in a better way and acceptance. You can just see that chart with which in Ayurveda it has been divided into Vata Prakriti, Pitta Prakriti and Kapha Prakriti Purushas. So just by assessing the characters, one can assess their own self, and according to that we can analyze our own selves and made changes according to the characters which we need. And to conclude, Thus, by educating one's own self with the knowledge of Ayurveda, can have a healthy body which gives room for a healthy mind and in turn pave the way for spiritual pursuit and growth. By attending this type of satsangas, one can easily pave the way to the spirituality as said by Adi Shankaracharya. Satsangatve nisangatvam, nisangatve nirmohatvam, nirmohatve nischalatatvam and nischalatatve jivan mukti. I pray Lord Dhanvantari, the God of Ayurveda, to keep all the human beings and also all the creatures in the world in a healthy state, in samastiti, at all levels to reach their spiritual goals. Namaste.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wonderful. Very beautiful, beautiful presentation. Now you can see whatever scientific discipline you discover, approach is always holistic. That is the thing. What is the definition of health? Now, very recently, the World Health Organization has added spirituality into it. Very recently. And you see the Ayurveda right from the very beginning, it says that Purushartha should be the goal of Ayurveda. And Purushartha not only Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha also should be included in that. So you take any path and ultimately you have to go to reach that. That kind of a universality in mind, hardly you can find sense anywhere. Now you can see that he says that susthasya swasthya rakshanam. It is not that they identified a disease and shoot it. Identify a disease and the allopathic shoot it. So if you shoot it here, it emerges somewhere else. I myself, I know, I'm not reading book and telling you that I have some kind of a problem in the skin. So they give me medicine, it vanishes in 7 days, but it emerges somewhere else. So this is kind of why the approach is not holistic, not holistic. So thank you very much for pointing out this. This is what we all want. So friends, I'm working like a clock. Now, so actually Nirjiva. And that is why in the very beginning while planning this seminar, I said that there should be 2 venues, Hall A and Hall B, so that sufficient time is given to the presenters because they have worked for so deliberately. But unfortunately, all of them have come to be accommodated in 1 hour. Therefore, I had to work like a clock. So anyway, with this, but before we disperse, I think we should listen something more from Professor Nair.
Although I wanted to tell you many things, I have only few seconds in Shankarapuram, Shankaranilayam. So I have one thing only to say, that during medieval days, during crusades, we hear about the use of gunpowder and bullets. We don't want any bullet war. Instead, we can strengthen the ballots. Perhaps during the last 67 years, only Rajiv Gandhi government had a majority. All other governments were minority governments. Why? Because we never exercised our franchise properly. And we had to, I invite you to adopt more a ballot culture, B-A-L-L-A-D and a B-A-L-L-E-T. Ballot and ballot instead of bullet. And everything is depending on Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram.
Sundaram.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Very good.